Caregiving. This is me, Jan Robson. I'm the Provincial Education Coordinator at the Alzheimer Society and your facilitator today. So what we'll be talking about are a few items today. One is recognizing the practical and emotional challenges of being a long-distance caregiver. And just in terms of definition, when I'm talking about a long-distance caregiver, basically I'm talking about someone who is far enough away that they can't just hop in the car and go and help out their family member. So that could be, depending on your personal situation, it could be as close as an hour away. It could be as far as the other side of the world. So long distance, that's really your definition of long distance. You're finding it very difficult to actually get to the person. We'll look at identifying some of the resources for the person in your life so that you can help set up a network for them and make life easier for them. How you can assess their needs. And when you do visit, what can you do to make the most of your visits? We'll look at sharing responsibilities and the question of moving. Should the person with dementia move closer to you? Should you move closer to the person with dementia? Perhaps neither, but at least looking at some of the issues involved in that. Now, certainly some of you will be the main caregiver for the person with dementia and be at a distance. So you, for example, might be the daughter and your father lives in Quebec, for example. And you have no siblings in Quebec, your mother is not around anymore, and so you are the main caregiver for your dad, despite the fact that you don't live there. Other people support the main caregiver. So your dad's in Quebec, but your sister lives half an hour away from him. So you're not the main caregiver, but you are doing what you can to support your sister. And certainly the really tough situation is when the person with dementia is on their own and you are a distance away. That's certainly the tough one, and the one where all sorts of feelings and fears arise for us. So what are some of the practical challenges? Well, just bottom line, distance. Even when you do live within drivable distance, if every issue that comes up, and as the dementia progresses, there will be more, and the person will be more nervous, they'll be less self-confident, they'll be relying on you more. If you are working full-time, perhaps you have a family you're caring for as well, you have a spouse, hopping in the car and driving for an hour can be a real challenge when it's being tacked on to the rest of your day. So distance is a real practical challenge. Often the distance is much more than driving for an hour, and so we're looking at cost, the cost just of travel. You take a plane to Winnipeg, you're looking at spending probably somewhere around about $800. And so unless you happen to have employment that is quite lucrative, you're not doing that once a month. Cost of providing alternate care, so providing alternate care for the person with dementia because you are not there, so putting some things in place. Also, the cost of providing care here. So, for example, you may have pets that have to be looked after when you're not here. You may have young children that you are paying someone to care for your children. You may have things that need to be taken care of here while you're not here. So that cost needs to be factored in as well. And often what happens, often what happens when you are particularly when you're the main long-distance caregiver, is all of your holiday time is taken up providing care. And so it's good to have it, it's wonderful to have it, but then there's that exhaustion factor too that comes in because there's really never a chance for you to really take a break, because when you're taking a break, you are then jumping in full force to being a caregiver. Just the other family responsibilities you have, I'd mentioned that earlier, and your work. You may find certainly as time goes on that you're having to make those trips, and whether those are the 1-hour trips or whether those are the plane trips to places more distant. This is sucking up your holiday time, and it may be going beyond that, and so you're feeling pressure from your job to not be using so much time, and that can be tough. Then there's a lot of emotional challenges as well. Certainly when you're not there all the time, you don't have that slow progression of the dementia. If you're there, for example, if you're visiting once a year, even twice a year, when you go, the changes are likely to be a little jarring because you're not. So dealing with grief, when you, for example, if you are visiting twice a year and each time you go, you're really seeing a decline, there's grief involved in dealing with this disease anyway. But that can hit quite hard when you are seeing such a dramatic difference from the last time you visited. Feeling powerless, and that goes along with feeling guilty, being frustrated, and often I think is an emotion that goes along with being a caregiver for most people anyway. We never feel like we're doing enough. We never feel like we're doing things well enough. But that can be, excuse me, compounded when you're not there. And you're feeling guilty that you're not there. You're feeling very powerless because things are happening and you're not able to step in and do what you would like to do. So there's very much that sense of, you know, I need to be here, but I need to be there, and people feeling really torn. Oops. So one of the things that can at least help a little bit with that is taking a good close look at what resources are available in the community of the person with dementia, and spending some time identifying them and putting as much in place as possible, because the more you have in place for the person, the less scary it is, because you know that there are supports for the person. So sometimes what people do is, you know, they just sit down and they make a list. What are the needs? And we'll talk about that in a minute. And what are some of the resources that can fill those needs? So for example, if meals are an issue and you're concerned that your family member is not eating enough, not eating healthy meals, that kind of thing, then sitting down and checking in that community what meal services are available, getting that down there. Who's the contact? What's the phone number? What are the hours, so that you know that you can be in touch? Having a clear sense for yourself of what's available in that community. Transportation is another one, and of course things like Handy Transit, Handy Dart, depending on the community, that's one resource. But really sitting down and identifying what's available for the person. Now this can be a huge challenge if the person with dementia is living in a small community. And that can be, you know, sometimes people will move to their dream home that's in a very small community, tucked away somewhere beautiful in the mountains on a Gulf island, and it's gorgeous and it's wonderful until there's a problem. And you're trying to put some resources in place, and there aren't that many. So that can be a real challenge. Excuse me. Figure out what resources are there. There are resources that can help you find resources. And certainly us, the Alzheimer Society of BC, the Alzheimer Society of Canada, the Alzheimer Society in the community or in the area that the person with dementia lives. So for example, if your family member is in Regina, then checking, you know, is there an Alzheimer's Society office in Regina, which there is, but checking that out, and then being in touch with them, finding out from them what they can offer, but also finding out from them what the community can offer, because they're going to be in a good position to say, well, you know, we have 3 different meal services, and there's 4 different kinds of transportation options, and there's 7-day programs, or, you know, whatever is available. They will be in a good position to pass that information along to you. One of the resources that is available through the Alzheimer's Society of BC is we have a suggested website list that you can request from us, and your individual community offices will provide community resource lists. So for example, if you live in Vancouver and your mother is in Prince George, if you contact the Alzheimer's Society office in Prince George, they can give you a community resource list that really lists a lot of those resources that you're going to be needing, and it can save you a lot of legwork. Another resource, of course, the internet. And one resource that I think increasingly is underutilized but still can be a huge, huge support is the local phone book. So if you're going to visit your father in Saskatoon, scoop a local phone book so that you have access to at least numbers that can lead you to numbers if you're not getting the right resource. But don't undersell the usefulness of the local phone books as long as we still have them. A lot of communities are certainly downsizing as far as what's available in their phone books. But they will at the very least have local government, provincial government phone numbers that can then put you in touch with what's available in the community. Other local resources that can be helpful, checking to see if there's a directory of senior services, a directory of community services and programs. And if you can't find these in other ways, if you even get the name of one of them, they can probably put you in touch with a directory, a listing of what their community has. The library is always a useful resource. And then just people living in the community. So your mom's next door neighbor, your mom's best friend who just moved into an independent seniors living facility. She may already have some information to be useful for your mother. So checking the network that's already there. The other thing when you're working with local resources, trying to suss out the local resources, it's really important to develop relationships. It works a lot better if you know that you are contacting Steve, who is the program director for Meals on Wheels, because then you're phoning Steve, and you're saying, "Hi, Steve, it's Jan from Vancouver calling about my dad," and you're going to get a better feel in terms of the connection you have. It's also very possible you're going to get better service. So work at developing relationships. These people, these agencies are going to be acting in your stead. And so the more you can build up that connection, and that can be with phone calls, that can be with dropping the odd email, it can be with the Christmas card, the thank you card. All of these things are really important to keep that network strong. Never, ever, ever hesitate to express your gratitude. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed with what needs to be done that the simple, "Oh my God, thank goodness you were there," kinds of comments get missed. And your gratitude can be expressed just verbally, or it can be the bouquet of flowers on Mother's Day, or it can be the bottle of wine at Christmas. It goes a long way. It fosters that connection. And that's, when we talk about communication, we're always talking about connection. But I think when we're talking about building a network for someone you are concerned about, that's all about connection as well. Make sure that confidential are addressed. So you'll want to have the appropriate legal documents that indicate that you are in the position to be making some decisions for your family member. And those documents will be different depending on the province. In BC, we have two really important legal documents. One is the enduring power of attorney for financial and legal issues. The other is the representation agreement, Section 9, and that's for health and personal care issues. Now, those will be different in different provinces. So if your family member lives in another province, check it out, and the Alzheimer's Society in that province can help you. What are the documents that I need to have in place for my dad, for my mom, for my brother, so that you are in a position then to act for them, or somebody else is. It doesn't always have to be you, of course, but if you're taking that role on, that you have the paperwork. I'm just going to have a little running story here. Joanne and her father, John, because their situation is very common. And we'll just look at some of the challenges Joanne faced trying to set up a network for her dad, John, and some of the things she did to make it easier. So John's 70 years old. He lives alone. His wife died a year ago, and since then, John's health has been declining. His short-term memory is not very good anymore. He has high blood pressure, and his overall seems to be on the decline. 2 months ago, John was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. John has only 2 adult living relatives, his brother Mike, who lives about an hour away from him, and his daughter Joanne, who lives in Kamloops, BC. Joanne talks to her father every week, but she simply can't afford to visit him in Ottawa more than twice a year. The flight is expensive, and she cannot take too much time off from her job. In addition, she has 2 teenagers at home that she can't leave alone for very long. Joanne is increasingly worried about her father. She suspects that he's not eating well because her mom used to do all the cooking. She's concerned about his safety. His brother had told her that twice John left the stove on while he was out, so she's getting worried. She knows that his poor memory might also affect his ability to take his medication regularly, and given that he's got high blood pressure, that's important. She wonders if her father is still able to take care of himself and be safe. Joanne is worried and feels powerless and guilty for not being able to do more for her father. So first step is she's got to get a real clear sense of what her dad's needs are. So, for any of us in this position, what are the gaps? What are the needs that we can start to address? And there's lots of them, and we'll look at each of these ones individually. So first of all is health. Bottom line health problems. Looking at, are there any new health problems since you were last visiting your family member? Is there a worsening of prior health problems? So, for example, the person may have, and they have COPD, but they're coping, but in the last few months, it's becoming more and more of a challenge. It's looking like they may need to be on oxygen, so getting a clear sense of what the needs are there. Is incontinence becoming an issue? Fainting. The person, when you're not there, they may underplay this. They may just almost by accident mention that when they were shopping the other day, they just kind of slumped to the ground. It was really, really strange. What they're not mentioning is that this has happened maybe 5 other times. And so trying to get a sense of what the health issues are. How is their vision? How is their hearing? Seeing if there's a change in sleep habits. What about hygiene? And this is one that, at least in most cases, you can assess fairly easily when you visit. You may have, for example, your mother was always just completely fastidious. You could eat off the floors in your house when you were growing up. And you go to visit, and everything is looking a little bit grimy, including her. That would be a huge red flag. Now, part of that certainly could be a vision issue, and so, checking that may have nothing to do with dementia. There may be little bits and pieces of stuff on the counter that never were on the counter before because she's simply not seeing them. But if overall hygiene is dropping considerably, that's probably the dementia as well. So unsanitary living conditions. Is there excessive use of alcohol or medication? And some of this might be almost that self-medication thing. Some of this might also be because of problems with memory. So, you ask your mom, how she's doing and what she's eating and that kind of thing. And she talks about her meals, and she says, of course, I have my 1 little glass of wine before dinner as well. And when you go to visit, you discover that, in fact, that 1 little glass of wine is 4 little glasses of wine, because she forgets that she's already had one. So she has a glass of wine while she's watching the talk shows at 4 o'clock, and then she has a glass of wine when she's watching the news at 5:30, and then she has a glass of wine with her dinner. She's forgotten that she had these glasses of wine. Or medication, taking too much because forgot that she'd already taken it. So is there difficulty managing medications? You're finding pills under the bathroom cabinet, and you're wondering if those just fell out of the bottle or did they fall out of the little pill dispenser that's got all the pills portioned out for the day. Is the person not keeping medical appointments? And so appointments are being made and they're not being kept. Then there's eating habits. Are their eating habits becoming irregular? Are they forgetting to eat? Or are they eating a lot because they've forgotten that they did eat? Is there things that are unhealthy, unsafe? And so that could be a situation where they've got in the fridge, it has an expiry date on it, but they don't pay attention to that. And so you go in the fridge and that lunch meat expired 2 months ago. So is there anything like that going on? Are they starting to have difficulty swallowing? And that can be a huge red flag as well. And that can also be a reason why they may not be eating as much. It's just not comfortable. So is there weight loss, weight gain, no appetite? Then safety issues. Now some of these will be easy for you to assess when you visit, some of them less so because they're less likely to happen when you're there. So has the person had falls recently? Are there slippery floor surfaces around the house that you can do something about? And that's one of the things that you certainly can do when you visit is go in with that critical eye and see if there's things in the house that are a fall waiting to happen and deal with those. Is the person becoming unsteady in the bath or shower? You may not see this. They may say something about it. They may say something about, they're making these bathtubs too high these days. I can't get in very easily. And meanwhile, it's the same bathtub they've had for the last 20 years. Are they having difficulty transferring from the toilet or from their chair to somewhere else? Is that getting up just, it's really hard. Is that becoming a challenge for them? So that you worry if they have to move fairly quickly when you're not there, how would they do it? Do they seem to have a lot of burns or bruises, often unexplained? What's that mark? Oh, gee, I don't know. I don't know when I did that. Are there a lot of those kinds of marks? Are there electrical hazards in the house that need to be addressed? Do they leave appliances on? And this is something probably you can address when you're there, because if they are using the electrical appliances, you can watch, you can pay attention. Do they wander outside the house, inappropriately dressed, that kind of thing? Do they go out and leave their doors unlocked? Have they locked themselves out of their house or apartment on numerous occasions, particularly if the person is in an apartment or a condo that has the automatically locking doors? Does this happen a lot? Are they still driving, and is it getting scary? And this is something you can assess when you're there. Gee, Mom, let's go to the store. Do you want to drive today? And then you can have a sense of their driving. Looking at their mental functioning, do they seem to be exhibiting increasingly poor judgment, saying things that they wouldn't have said before, talking about people in a way that they never talked about people before? Is there mental confusion? So they seem to be muddled a lot of the time. Is their behavior inappropriate? Have they had hallucinations? Are they exhibiting paranoia? So why are you visiting me again? Well, I'm your daughter. But why are you visiting? Are you coming here to check up on me? That kind of thing. Are they disoriented, increased memory loss, difficulty finding words? Keep in mind that as a person ages, that difficulty finding, the naming, that kind of thing is normal. But is it above and beyond what might be considered normal? Emotions. Are they changing in the emotional department? Do they seem to be sad a lot, crying for no particular reason, depressed, frequent angry outbursts that, again, no real reason for them? Are they much more fearful than they used to be? Certainly when a person has dementia, even in the very early stages, it's not unusual for them to lose confidence in their abilities. They're second-guessing themselves all the time. But are they very fearful and and limiting themselves from so many things because of their fearfulness. So have they withdrawn? Are they isolated? Assess their finances. What's going on in that regard? Do they seem to be unsafe with money? Are they hiding it? You're finding bills tucked here, there, and everywhere. You're finding money that's just kind of dropped here and there, and they really don't have enough to be throwing it around. Are they mismanaging their finances? And this might be something like huge donations or frequent donations to charities, but they're donating money to the extent that they cannot afford it. So, you happen to check, and there's $100 to this charity and $200 to that one, $500 to that one, and this is happening a lot. And that can be a challenge because, again, legitimate charities will send out the letters asking for donations, and that can feel pressuring to people who have dementia. I have 10 of these letters asking me for money. I don't know what to do. And what they might do if you're not there is give all of those charities money, and they can't afford it. Are you noticing unpaid bills? So there's this little stack of stuff in the den, and when you look at it, you realize it's bills dating back 4 months that haven't been paid. They're very vulnerable to scams when they have dementia. So, keep the antenna up. Are they saying things that, talking about money-making schemes or something that really don't sound legitimate? Are they making big purchases? So your dad, who used to enjoy boating but hasn't done it for 10 years, goes out and puts a down payment on a pretty huge motorboat that realistically, given mobility issues and whatnot, he's not going to be able to use. So big purchases. Then just the area of socialization. Are they increasingly pulling in? Are they becoming increasingly isolated? Now, some people are anyway, but a particular red flag if it's a person who was typically quite social and now they're not doing much at all. Do they seem to be losing the social skills, and so they're finding it hard to interact with friends? They're losing interest in hobbies, things that used to hold their attention they don't have interest in anymore. They are very vulnerable to predators, and so in the area of socialization, keep an ear out if there's a new friend. Obviously, you want your family member to have friends, but is that new friend way, way, way younger than them? And you wonder what's going on there. So being really vigilant about those kinds of things. Checking out what's happening in the daily living department. Are they still able to do their own shopping, grocery shopping, hygiene, that kind of thing? Are they able to access transportation, whether that's their own driving still or other sources of transportation? Can they still cook? Sometimes they don't feel like it. They may say, particularly a woman who has had children and has cooked meals for the last 40 years, her comment might be, I'm not doing much cooking, but I don't want to. I've cooked, I'm up to here with cooking. But can they? Are they able to at least provide healthy meals for themselves, even if they aren't fancy? And then again, hygiene, house cleaning, that kind of thing. Are things basically up to par for the person? So those are a lot of areas to check out. And it seems like it would, take weeks to really get a good read on that. A lot of it you can get at least a sense of when you're visiting, but do keep in mind when you visit that you're not getting 100% of the picture. So here's Joanne, back to Joanne, and she's planning a visit to Ottawa. She's planning a 10-day visit. She talked to her father and her uncle and shared with them some of her goals for the visit. Her goals are to visit with them, and that's real important. When there's a lot of things to do and when there's a lot of things that we need to have addressed, it can be very easy to go into this, ticking off the to-do list mode. The main thing on that to-do list is to see the person that you love. So, that's the top thing on Joanne's list. Also, her goal is to evaluate her father's health and living conditions and to find solutions or resources with and for her father. He is still able to live on his own with help, And so he needs to be brought into this discussion. Her uncle mailed and emailed her some of the resources available in Ottawa, including contact numbers for John's doctor, the health worker, the neighbor. Joanne made appointments with all of these people and is determined to see as many people and resources as she can during her visit to Ottawa. Directory of all the contacts involved in John's care, and she will share it with John and her uncle. So making the most of your visit. Now, as I mentioned, you do want to use your time well, but you also want to avoid the swoop in and swoop out, where you're going in, you're doing 20 things, and then you're out of there. I remember one caregiver some years back, she said her mother was already in a care facility at this point, but she would still go in with her to-do list because it was certainly still her role as the caregiver, albeit the long-distance caregiver, to ensure that things were going well for her mom. So she would come in with her little list, or her big list, and she says, I swear the staff were hiding under the desks when they saw me coming, she said. And she recognized that in herself, that she had to just kind of gear down, get to her to-do list, but the important thing was the personal connections. So in terms of visiting, plan your appointments ahead of time. Research local services as much as you can before you go. Pull the person with dementia into this planning process. You don't want them feeling like you are, swooping around above them and you're going to do for them. You're going to do with at this point. Reassess their needs anytime you visit. Make a list of things. Have a list on hand of things like medication, their medical history, emergency numbers, contact numbers. Keep all of this in an easily accessible place for yourself. If there is an emergency at some point, you don't want to be digging for this stuff because that is not the time when you're going to be thinking clearly. You need to have it on hand. And look at sharing responsibilities. Now, there may be other family members in the area. In Joanne's case, it's her uncle. So as much as possible, she's pulling her uncle in. Looking at friends and neighbors in the community. It could be that young couple that lives next door to your dad, who you're not asking them to really do much for your dad. You're asking them to be eyes and ears. It could be the friends that your dad gets together with for coffee every Saturday at the local community center. Just talking to them and, here's my number. If you're concerned, please let me know. Doing that reaching out to people. Service agencies, contractors, nonprofit agencies, social clubs, these potential organizations that would form that network can help to share some of the responsibility. And of course, the key people in the person's care, if there's a social worker involved, doctors, that kind of thing. Oops. The other thing that I just want to mention about the family members is, as a long-distance caregiver, you may not be the only caregiver. In Joanne's case, she's got her uncle. For a lot of us, it might be a sibling or siblings that live closer to your parent, for example, than you do. You want to help, but you can't do it 50-50. And in most cases, in most families, the other family members that live close by don't expect 50-50. But you can look at what you can do. You're maybe not there all the time to share 50-50, but what you can do is every summer you can be there for a solid week so that your brother can go on vacation. Things like that are appreciated by the people that are on site. So going back to Joanne, and she's got her visit now. She's going to Ottawa. This time she's shocked to see how much her father has changed. Again, when there's 6 months, as in Joanne's case, in between, a lot can happen. He's lost a lot of weight and looks much older than the last time she saw him. He seems fragile and unsteady. His memory is worse than she anticipated, but he still seems mentally alert. She's happy to see her, though. After a few days of visiting her father and staying at his house, she thinks she has a good idea of the situation. She observed several problems and came up with the following solutions. One problem, health. So she contacted the community health care center. They will assign a case manager who will visit John once a month and report to her. A nurse will visit once a month as well. Now, another problem, John's lost weight. So he's not cooking, doesn't know what to buy at the grocery store. So Joanne arranged to have meals delivered to her father's house 7 days a week. She showed him how to cook frozen meals in the microwave and prepared a shopping list of frozen meals and food that require no cooking that her father can buy at the grocery store. He's still able to do this. The other concern that she noted was that he's not taking his pills regularly and is missing medical appointments. So Joanne bought her father an electronic pill dispenser with an alarm. So when it's time for his next set of pills, the alarm goes off. She talked to the pharmacist and he agreed to combine John's heart and Alzheimer's disease medications into blister packs. John agreed somewhat reluctantly to once a week to help with organizing the pills into the pill dispenser, driving him to medical appointments, and cleaning the house and doing the laundry. That can be a hard sell for a lot of people. And sometimes you have to use a little bit of that stretching the truth. For some people it's, but Dad, it's free. The health department provides this service. And Dad might be okay with it if it's free. If he thinks, it's being paid for, not so much. Or, but Dad, I paid for the worker to come to your house for the next 6 months. I can't get my money back. And he doesn't want to waste the money. So you may have to use some strategies like that to get him to accept this help. Joanne was also concerned that her dad wasn't socializing much. So the local church group agreed to pick him up for Sunday services and bring him to church outings when he's interested. The neighbor, who knows John well, agreed to keep an eye on John's situation and report to Joanne. He's encouraging John to go with him to the seniors center at least once a week, and he helps John make decisions about the house maintenance and repairs with the assistance of John's brother. So she's got the neighbor and the brother on board with that. She's also a little concerned about safety. She sold a stove. Her uncle said, it had been left on at least a couple of times when her dad was out, so she sold the stove and bought an induction stove instead that's not hot to the touch. She had a contractor install safety bars in the bathroom, and there are grants available if a person's finances are a little iffy. House maintenance and repairs was a bit of an issue, so she found a contractor that she trusts to do repairs and maintenance on the house. John's brother will be the contact person and will help evaluate the work that needs to be done. The lawn maintenance will be done by a landscaping company, and John's neighbor will be the contact person. And then finances. She sold her dad's car. He only used it twice in the last 6 anyway, and the money that she got selling her dad's car will help pay for some of the services that her dad requires. She's arranged automatic monthly payments to pay the mortgage, credit card, utilities, so he doesn't have to worry about bills. And she and her father contacted a lawyer and made a power of attorney. So she's got a few things done. Now, sometimes when we're faced with being the caregiver for a person with dementia elsewhere, one of the options we look at, one way that we might consider moving is moving the person with dementia. So certainly if you're looking, for example, if it's your mother and your mother is in Toronto and you're thinking it would be so much better if she was here and then I could be that much more involved with her care. So of course one of the pros, you're there, you're close. You're better able to provide that up to the minute kind of support. So you might feel a whole lot better in terms of her safety. It would save money, at least as far as your travel costs go, and you'd have a lot more peace of mind if she was closer. As with most things, there are cons, though. She would be leaving a familiar place, and if Toronto was the city that she lived in all or most of her life, that is not insignificant. It can be very stressful for a person with dementia to move. And some of the things that are pros can also be cons. So one of the pros is that you'll be there. The con is you'll be there. So you will be doing more hands-on caregiving. Are you able to? Is this something that you can incorporate into your life? Or is this something that sounds like a good idea, you just don't know how you're going to fit it in? Another thing is qualifying time for service. So when someone comes from elsewhere, they will not be eligible for services, subsidized services right away. In BC, if you're moving from somewhere else in Canada, the qualifying time is 3 months before BC Medical kicks in. And so if any services are required during that 3 months, that will be user pay. If the person is not a Canadian citizen, then that's huge. Because basically what that means is you or your family member will be paying for services that are required. There's also the availability of care. Depending on where you live, is there a good network where you are as well? So you'll be there. But is there a day program? Is there support for your family member that can help you out? Is there a decent residential care facility or assisted living facility, depending on how your family member is, that might be an option if it's difficult for her to live with you? So, what's available where you are? So another option that, again, is often considered to be close, for example, to your mom. So certainly with something like that, there's practical considerations. Can you just give up your job? Are you in a financial position to do that? Would you be looking to find, where your mother lives, for example? And certainly there might very well be family obligations. So is your husband, is your wife willing to make that move? Are there kids in the picture? Will you uproot your life and then end up moving for? And that is absolutely not an insignificant consideration either. If you're doing it freely, lovingly, willingly, and that won't change, wonderful. If you're doing it and then you're resenting every can't. I'm losing 5 years of productive work time. I've lost my friends. I've lost this. And there's that boiling resentment. You're not doing your family member or yourself any favors. If there are caregivers